audibly, please?
Very good morning to one and all. I hope you're able to see me and you are able to see my screen.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you very much. I first congratulate the institution for taking up a very relevant subject for discussion, that is academic and administrative audit. I don't know how many of you know that how essential it is to judge ourselves and to get ready for the challenges that we are facing for tomorrow. Academic and administrative audit will essentially help us for that. Getting into the topic, I have 1 hour time and let me try to give you the overall picture of why and how academic audit happens. So first of all, telling you what is an audit. I'm here to talk about the essentials of academic and administrative audit. Now, audit is an examination or inspection that involves physically checking the inventories to make sure that all departments are following a documentary system of recording its transactions. Now, talking it that it could be any type of audit. There are different kinds of audits that you have. You have a financial audit, you have a performance audit. Like if you see any transport department, we have a performance audit. So how good a mileage of a particular vehicle is. So it becomes a performance audit. Outcome audit, in terms of things that involve soft skills. So we talk about what is the outcome, that is the value for money, what you're spending it for. Some of it are statutory audits, like, there are certain statutory requirements, whether you're following it or not. Safety standards are statutory audits. So there will be an institution that sets statutory requirements, like say AICTE sets a statutory requirements, MCI, PCI sets a statutory requirement, whether the institution is adopting to those standards or not. So then that becomes a statutory audit. Forensic audit. Now, most of this is that when an error is committed, when an accident happens, then we audit that why did it happen, how did it happen, and where was the loopholes to fix it. So that becomes a forensic audit. It happens mostly in hospitals, wherever there is a trauma case where it leads to death in the operation table or within the hospital premises. Then they do this forensic audit to talk about that what they could have done to prevent such failures. Information system audit, it happens mostly with the IT companies where or any system where you have a IT establishment. Like if you have a ER system in your institution, then you can perform this what is called as an information system audit. So with whatever the information that you have with the ER, you can perform an audit that what you can do about with. The compliance audit is that to be more closer with that of the statutory audit, that there are certain compliances that that are required. Like for example, if we say that physically handicapped or an institution that admits physically handicapped should have these facilities, or if we talk about the reservation policies that we need to comply to, or the UGC quality standards that they have set for appointments or something like that. So that becomes a compliance audit. Certain institutions have something beyond the compliance, and that is called as an agreed upon procedures. So what do we do as an institution? We all decide to adhere to certain procedures and standards. And we see now how much our adherence is and what it has led to. That becomes an AUP, that is agreed upon procedure audit. And some of them are also can be like operational audit, like you have so many rules defined, you have so many procedures defined, research ethics defined, research policies defined, many other things defined. But how does it operate? From the definition of what is there in paper to what it is operating. So how that audit can be. That is operational audit. Essentially, your academic audit academic and administrative audit for that matter, will include all these aspects put together. Now, how do you want this audit to be? You want it to be an external audit or an internal audit? It depends on the person whom you wanted to involve. If you are going to audit yourself, then that is going to be an internal audit, wherein the people who are involved to audit is also from inside and the subject is also from inside. Now, external audit is that you invite somebody from outside to audit yourself, that is your institution, then it becomes an external audit. So the process is like this, that you will be knowing your clients, your clients is your students, and then you will also have your academic everything surrounding them, administration and academic processes surrounding them. The essential transaction here is that teaching, learning, and all other aspects are supporting aspects around it. So you will have an audit planning and strategies that you will put it. You will do some field work and you will obtain some information, because in the audit, most of the thing that's going to talk about is the paperworks that you have done. So the documentation that you have done, the performance outcome and outfit that you are going to show it to them through documents. So you're going to evaluate, analyze the impact of that evidences that you're going to produce. So this also will have exercising of professional judgments that they need to make, and a report that you require to prepare, because this report is going to be a comparative report to the next audit that you would be performing. So what is it going to be? An academic and administrative audit. So what is audit to academia? In academia, an audit is an educational term for the operations of academic transactions in the pursuits of teaching, learning, and research, the activities, the materials, and the processes that are involved in achieving the set goals. So here we are going to do an audit. Now, audit essentially does not mean only a financial kind. It also can be a process kind. Now, in academia, we are going to do a process audit or an outcome audit. Now, in this, it is going to be whatever the transaction that takes place in teaching and learning. Like, for example, from setting standards to your syllabus, to how do you teach that syllabus, to how do you do your lesson plans, how do you say your program, set your program outcomes, course outcomes. Now, how do you, in this process of teaching, learning, now how do you identify whether the student have learned a particular skill that you wanted to teach or not? It also involves the types of evaluations that you do, and the materials that you employ in terms of LMS or in terms of the teaching learning materials that you have, and the processes that you have set. Now, all these things which are involved in this teaching learning process, everything will undergo an audit. Now, who is the subject matter here? All the academic units of the institution will be a subject matter here. That means all persons who are involved in teaching learning, the supporting staffs for the teaching learning processes, all the departments that have admitted students and that involve with the students in terms of academic pursuits. Now, all of them will be a subject here to be audited. Now, who audits? Sometimes it can be peer-to-peer audit. Like, for example, you have an engineering department, a mechanical engineering department, you have a civil engineering department. You can allow mechanical engineering department to audit civil engineering department and civil engineering audit mechanical engineering department. So this can be a peer-to-peer audit, or it can be a big B approach. Now, what is a big brother approach? If you imagine that you have some institutions above you who are performing much better than you, like say any professors from NITs or IITs for that matter. So you can have them as your big brother, and you can invite them or that particular department people to come and audit your department, so that you understand that what you lack through, because if you want to reach to the big B's position, what all you need to do, you need to be you need to be assessed by a person who is higher order than you. Or it could be a collaborative or integrated approach, wherein that there are few people from your own institution also, there are people from outside the institution, from the big B institutions also, So put together, they are going to audit it so that there is checks and balances, because internal people will understand where your lacunas are, where your you know weaknesses are, or to those given to an understanding of the performance arena is. So where are the lacunas, or where are some gaps? But the outside people will say where you need to reach through. So that way it becomes an integrated approach. Now, what can be an administrative audit? An administrative audit can be defined as a process of evaluating the efficiency and the effectiveness of the administrative procedure. Now, all administrative units, like say if you have a unit for admissions, or if you have a unit for examination, if you have a unit for say fee, scholarship, etc., if you have a unit for say the registrar section or the principal's office for that matter, now all of them, whichever you call it as an administrative units, all of them will have a evaluation onto their efficiency and the effectiveness of their functioning. Now, this includes the assessment of the policies that you have trained, the strategies you have adopted, the functions of various administrative units, the control of the overall administrative system. Everything will be audited. Now, who's the subject here? All the administrative units of the institution will be the subject here. Again, you can have a peer-to-peer, one section auditing the another section, or a big B approach wherein you consider somebody as a good performance for administration and they come and audit you, or it can be a collaborative approach also. Now, why do we need it at all? See, everybody wants to improve and grow and develop. This is a call of life. What we call it as a calf that is born as calf should become a bull someday. But if you continue doing the same thing and expect a different result to happen, that will not be appropriate. It will be mastering the art of ambiguity. If we perform the same thing again and again, the way whatever we do, we keep doing the same way, but we expect a new result to happen immediately. That is, we become, at the wake of day, we become one among top 10 institution in NARF. But we don't want to change anything that we are doing for years together in our institution. That cannot happen. So if you continue doing the same thing and wait for a better results to happen, then we will not know how ambiguous we are. So in order to do that, we have to do the AAA. A AAA is a self-introspection that gives you the SWOT, that is the strength, weakness, opportunities, and challenges of an institution. So once you do a AAA, you will understand what are your strengths, what are your weakness, what are the opportunities that you have, and what are the challenges that you have. You also always, resource is a very limited, resource is always a very limited in nature as far as economics is concerned. Now, augmented and optimum utilization of that resource requires a good planning and resource allocation. Now, this can happen only when you do an audit or self-introspection to understand where a particular resource has to go, how much and how far a resource to be employed in what kind in an institution. Now, also AAA gives you a good collegiality. That is, it gives you a companionship and cooperation between the departments. Like when one department goes to another department, or when this interdepartmental lookouts happen, you understand what is best and what is worst in other departments, so as to correct yourself through the mistakes that are committed by others. Now, that's a wise way to correct yourself. It also gives you an innovative and modern methods of pedagogy, because if you look around and start seeing that how things have changed around, and when you look into yourself, you understand that how much there is a need of innovation and how much there is implementation of pedagogical changes that you need in your institution. Benefits, when you come to accreditation, it helps you in arranging up your data more appropriately. And not only that, when you do other interdepartmental or inter-institutional AAA, there is also inter or intra-institutional understanding of the functionings. It also helps you to improve yourself. When you improve yourself, you give your student particular prospects for the recruits. Now, the society also looks forward for a good quality education that is offered by institutions. It gives you a new sense of direction and identity. And when you improve yourself, you attract more amount of funding for your performances. Quality education is also one of the goals of sustainable development goals of UN. And that way, in order to increase the quality of education, higher education more in specific, it is very, very important that we have an internal mechanism that is institutionalized for the improvement of quality. Okay. Now, what all we need to keep in mind before a AAA, the thumb rules that we call it as. So AAA is academic and administrative audit put together. Okay. Here we are not trying to compare one department with another. Here we are not comparing one faculty with another. Apples are not equal to oranges. So a performance of a humanities stream will be different than that of the performance of a science stream. So we should understand what the inherent quality of a department is before we are going to have an audit on that. You should also understand 5 fingers are not equal. So what you expect the performance from a finance unit is not the same with that of the examination unit. So, but every single finger has its own very important function to give. So we have to audit that to that of the functions that that a particular department or an internal unit is supposed to have. Okay, now why do we do an academic audit at all? God doesn't give the hardest battle to toughest soldiers, but He creates the toughest soldier through the life's hardest battles. So if you want to face something hard, like say you want to face QS ranking, or you want to face NIRF, or you want to face NAC, or you wanted to face something like kind of a competitive in nature, then you should make yourself hard and tough so that you can win those battles. So you, because for an institution to become great, that it perceives itself to be great through different tests that it undergoes. As they say in Tamil, suda suda sangu venmayagum. So if you want the shell to be bright, then you need to heat it. You want the gold to be good ductile, then you need to be heating it to a degree Celsius. So not to say this to the learned forum, that once you fix yourself hard goals to achieve, until then you're not going to become the best. Now for that, you need to understand what you are worth for and the process and procedures that you need to put forth to achieve that worthness. That matters a lot. Okay, now we need to set the audit, set the stage before the audit. Now what is setting the stage? Okay, let me just tell you, look at the picture that you have here. This is Lord Shiva with his family. Now with his family, Parvati, Kartikeya and Ganesha, with all their Vahans also. The Vahan of Kartikeya is peacock, the Vahan of Ganesha is rat or mouse, the Vahan of Devi, Parvati is lion, and the Vahan of Shiva is a bull. Now look at this, how contradicting it could be that there is a food chain involved here. The mouse, the peacock is a predator of mouse, and the bull and lion, the lion is a predator of bull. But how does this family rest in peace or give us a very peaceful appearance here? Here, the very purpose of the predator prey is defeated. The purpose of predator prey is what you call it as appetite. Now the appetite is defeated here. Now, what is that appetite that can defeat to establish peace in our organization is the fact of ego and the fact of unhealthy competition. So if we say that, what kind of an unhealthy competition can I be? That you try to establish something in common to everybody, or you try to say that I am bigger than somebody else, but we all coexist for something that is for the organization. So we need to understand, if we have gained something much superior, our superiority lies in giving it back to the organization. So that way, we need to set the stage of what every department's expectation could be, is not in comparison with any other department, but put together should be defining the goal of the institution in total. Okay. Now we say that there are different things to come. We have NEP to come. We have national level changes to come. So how do we react to that? Now, national level changes only in books or in terms of document will not be sufficient. Higher education institutions will need to embrace the change by themselves. Until the institution decide to change by themselves, this change is not going to be effective. So the effectiveness of this change is that how do we adopt and adapt to these changes and institutionalize these changes and practice the changes, rather than giving it just in terms of numbers that we wanted to see. Okay, now talking about AAA, whether it is a compulsory process, whether all institutions should be having an internal, academic and administrative audit, and whether it has to be an external or internal. Now let me answer this question. You know this chicken egg, isn't it? If an egg is broken by an outside force, life ends. If broken by an inside force, life begins. A great thing always begins from inside. So I will say that the academic and administrative audit made internal is more open, that you needn't have to prove anything to anybody, but you know that this is an open process where you are here to understand each other's best and worst components of performance. Well, and in terms of whether it has to be a compulsory process or a voluntary process, see, the institutions have a commitment. Now, commitment is a word of act and not a word as such, isn't it? So then it is something which is related to performance, and quality is not accidental. It is always a result of intelligent and very intended efforts. So that means it is going to be more voluntary, that whatever you commit for an institution, whatever you commit as a faculty, or whatever you commit as an institution, is towards quality, and that quality cannot be achieved accidentally. So this quality can be achieved only through intended process and intelligent efforts. Now, these intelligent efforts are not streamlined, are not benchmarked, are not milestoned, then it is very, very, unfortunate that we will be lost in the process. So, volunteered, internally intended efforts that aim to provide externally visible impact is that what I will call it as a academic and administrative audit as. So institutional quality is not just a number or as an event or as anything, but it is an integrated approach. Now, it's an integrated approach that it involves all the stakeholders at different levels to perform their best at their own levels. It talks about the specification that you keep for your customer. Your customer here is the student. So in case of specification will be the graduate outcomes that you wanted to keep it as the best achievement that you wanted to have. And that cannot be done without the processes and procedures that you put in in terms of the different aspects that you have for the teaching, learning, and all that academic processes and procedures. Now, with that, also the policies that you have for your institution. Now, this policies also involves the employee development, like, for example, the teacher enhancing his or her own skills, the administrator enhancing his own skills, and the standards that you set for yourself. That's the benchmark that you keep for yourself. Now, this benchmark is not that you achieve that benchmark, things are over. It is a continuous improvement. And that continuous improvement is that continuous changing of the benchmark or upgrading of the benchmark. And then it also takes your results to a higher order every year. So it is also defined by the results that you get out of these. And then you set your expectations. Now, who sets your expectations? Your leadership set your expectations with a bit of commitment towards the customer focus. Customer focus, I will say, towards very good employment, very good, achievements by your students, very good standard packages that you get, very good companies that you can attract for your students. Now, all these things will have an integrated approach. That means from the gatekeeper to the head of the organization of your institution is involved in this process in achieving this particular quality that we talk about. So it is absolutely a teamwork, and a teamwork that have a collective effort towards each and every commitment to work that we have adapted to. In terms of academic and administrative audit, I've seen many institutions who invite, who kind of have an MOU with each other that, you will do the audit of my organization and I will do the audit of your organization. But here the question is not to compare with each other, because at the end of the day, the biggest competition should be you, because you are the real competition towards yourself. So academic administrative audit is not in comparison with institutions around you. It is the best to evolve your own benchmark. So how best you are with yourself. So you keep the benchmark for yourself and you try to achieve that. Give it some years, say 2 years, 3 years time, and you try to evolve yourself, how much you were able to achieve and how much you were not able to achieve, and why you are not able to achieve, what all you achieved and what all did you not achieve. So in this aspect, it is better. Now, some of them actually restrict the academic and administrative audit only to materialistic possessions. Like, for example, you had this many buildings this year, so this year it increased, or you had this many computers, it increased this year. So when we talk about one academic audit to the next academic audit, when you will be having in a time period, if the change is positive or negative, if you have to talk about, think about this. As today's child asking yesterday's father, I have a netbook, MP3 flash drive, iPad. Dad, what did you use in your school when you were a student? The dad says, my brain. Simple as that, having all these instruments, but what you're using it for, how you're using it as, and what it is yielding to is more important than the mere possession of any instrument as such. So the point here is that to look at the outcome, then to look at the output. They both are different. You talk about a graduated student as an output, but if you see that how well they are placed and what positions they are in is an outcome. So it's good to look at the outcome and output together rather than only merely looking at numbers alone, which is an output. Okay, so when to do this academic audit? Can we do it tomorrow, or it's a very cumbersome process? Oh my God, and I'm already stressed with all my lesson plans and the semester system, the whatever I have to involve in. Feel like more like it later, so I can do it tomorrow. See, if you're an institution who are established and already been functioning for 5 years, then you should have done it yesterday. Because if you do not lay the roads, but want your journey to be smooth, it cannot be. Academic and administrative audits are the roads that foresee your future development. So it should have done along with the establishment of the institution at regular intervals. Now, what this regular interval can be, Many of them do it just before the NAC visit because you have a NAC parameter asking whether you have done an academic and administrative audit. But some of the institutions who are very, very conscious about their quality do it as a routine process once in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Some of the institutions even do it every year also. They call it as Quadrant A, which is annual academic and administrative audit. Okay, so what is the right time to start? A stitch in time saves nine. A right time to start is that before you fall apart, before that you put the stitch. Is that before you have your aims to be a best institution, before you have the aims to improve your quality, it is better that you set these standards because it helps you in introspecting yourself within yourself. So that way, you know that all institutions are not perfect. Having that, even I know that my own organization is not perfect by itself. Every organization is so. Then, having known that it's not perfect and also having known that what are all the problems that are there in my institution, then being silence is a sign of non-response. And non-response is a sign of being dead. Being alive is to respond. So having judged your weakness, AAA is a good start to overcome each one of the weaknesses that you have in your institution. Any pursuit have an intended result, isn't it? So as in pursuit of academic or administration for that matter, we have an intended result that that particular thing needs to perform, particular department needs to perform. So like, for example, how well a syllabus is uncovered, how effectively a teacher teaches in a class, how well the industry academia initiatives yield back to the institution, what you hear from the alumni, so how much they have performed and what they have to tell you to incorporate back into your system. Now, all these things is a intended results that you have for a pursuit that you have. As an institution, like say, as a teacher, as my eyes and ears closed, day in, day out, I just lecture out, I cover my portion, I do not uncover my portion. It is easy to be a teacher. But imagine being a teacher to create a good citizen, teacher to create a good graduate, teacher to create a very good ambience of teaching, learning. All this thing is a package of performance that a teacher is expected to do. So it's not that in a defined term I wanted to go about what the performance can be, but it is in a holistic manner that we need to look at the process and the intended result. Many of them try to put their best part at front of the teams when the academic audit comes. But please understand, it is always good to be to what you are. Okay. I would like to call the readings of Bernard Shaw here, looking through the keyhole. Now here Bernard Shaw says that when you look through a keyhole, how families are different. But when a guest comes, how the families are different, they try to act in front of them, a kind of putting a show in front of them. They try to put as if like everything is perfect and everything is very good, and they try to be more hospital as possible to you and all those things. But when you look through a keyhole, only then you understand how natural a family is when they are left to their own self. So it's important to evaluate departments through a keyhole, then rather being a guest to them. So now keyhole, who can see through a keyhole or who can establish themselves through a keyhole is the department itself rather. Imagine the internal force. So you can, or a neighborhood department looking through the keyhole for that matter, or a neighborhood institution looking through the keyhole. But more important is that you be natural and not to be kind of making over for the academic or administrative audit, because you understand how much ever you try to put your best show, it is truth that always wins. So it is better to be truthful in terms of the documentary evidences that you wanted to show than to be over ambitious, because this academic and administrative audit is more to know your weakness and more to know your opportunities than to know your strength, because every one of us will know what is our strength, but most of us will not know what is our weakness or what opportunities that we can actually have, or challenges that we can overcome. That is more important for us to understand. Essentially, these audits are not to frame who is responsible. Look, there are actually a very good difference between what is responsible and who is responsible. Any discussion should be in terms of what is responsible. That is, let us focus on the process than on the persons. If it is to be on the persons, it is going to be a blame game. That is, the principal are going to blame the teachers are going to blame their students are going to blame somebody else. So this blame is going to be the passing game. But what is responsible, that is it to the process, it can be very easily fixed. So that is why now the focus of it is to be what is responsible. So that is more understanding. And also to look at, many of us, we try to adapt the academic and administrative frameworks from different institutions or different organizations for that matter. Please do not do that, because what it may work in one case is not necessarily the best solution for the other case. So if it is important that you need to evolve your own benchmarks, evolve your own frameworks with all that what you have, because an institution which is only 5 years of existence cannot think about having QS ranking. It's not that I should not think about, but I mean to say cannot think about, because the first step is towards establishing yourself as a good institution, then thinking about to be a best institution. So for that matter, then you have to work about compliances in the first 5 years. In the next 5 years, you think about performances. In the next 5 years, you think about benchmarking. And in the next 5 years, you can think about achievements where you wanted to be. So then your framework are different in different establishment years of your institution and the growth of your institution also for that matter. Now, how do you prepare? Now, keep in mind the matrices that are in focus with NAC, NIRF, AICTE, or what they UGC ask you about in terms of when you want to become a higher order institution, like potential for excellence or institution for eminences. They have certain questions they ask you when you are towards these organizations. Essentially, this should be the questions inside your academic audit. But apart from that, where do you want to go? Like, for example, in the international rankings, they ask you different questions apart from what these people ask you. So that also you need to include. And for the questions for yourself for a better improvement, that also you need to include. So put together, you will have a framework of what you need to ask. Now, you cannot decide your journey where to go before you start. So you need to decide where you go before you start. So what is your aim? What is your plan actually? What's your milestone? So you want to be in the first 100 list of the NIRF. If you're already in the first 100, how about in the first 50? If you're already in the first 50, how about in the first 10? So do you want to become the institution of eminence in, say, some period of time? Then how do you do that? Or you want to become the first within first 100 institution of QS ranking? Then how do you do that? So give it yourself a time. Okay, you have a long-term planning and a short-term planning. So when you have a long-term planning, in 10 years, in 20 years, you want to become this. And a short-term planning, so for this, I need to do these. And for these, I need to practice this from today. So when you have your long-term planning shortened up to a short-term planning with that of the annual planning when you do, now that gives you a better focus or a better strategy to proceed about what you wanted to decide to go to the place that you're destined to. Well, many people say that, academic, okay, I have so many things to audit about, like say, from the teacher, what is her qualification, PhDs, publication, research, to the practices that we have, pedagogy that we have, teaching, learning, and to the practices that we have, to the standards that we have. All of these are there. Now, what about academic? What about administrative? Do we have so many things to do? Imagine academic and administrative are two sides of a coin of an institution. The coin is not valued if you do not have any one side blank. Okay, if you do not have something printed, if the head or tail is not printed, what that coin is worth of. So it is important that both of them should not contradict each other, rather should be complementing each other in establishing the value of the institution rather. So that way, we have a long way to go for academic caliber improvement also. Like we talk about collegiality. Now, how much collegiality they are, like if you have an academic administrative staff set for, say, some staff together, like 1:10 ratio. So we also see not only student staff ratio, we also see academic and administrative staff ratio also. And we see the timeliness, like timeliness in terms of any file. What was the longest time taken for the file to be cleared, and what is the shortest time taken for a file to be cleared or an issue to be resolved for that matter. Now, how much there is a sense making, your policies and the practice, how much it makes a sense making. Now, how much you are process driven? Do you have a process for everything established very clearly? That is, your rule book defines your rules very clearly. And the rule positions and its effectiveness in terms of its implications or its practices for that matter. Now, how much you have a new media literacy? Do you still have that age-old system of writing in a file and sending it, or do you have practice digital methods to do that? Now, how much training you have given them in terms of from the personality development to the communication skills to the competence development in their own field. So how much of competence development, how much you have given like coding system, bar coding, or online examination evaluation systems or any other aspects like this. So how much do you keep on giving a competence development programs for these people? Also talks a lot about the development of academic administrative caliber in the administrative staff of your institution. How do you improve your academic performance? It's always a question. Where do we think, what aspect do we use? We use a stick aspect or do we use a carrot aspect? Motivation is a very good aspect that we can take here. Now, what you're going to use, stick or carrot, does not matter, but it needs to motivate your staff. Though it may be a stick or carrot, if it does not motivate your staff, now that approach is totally a failure. Now, to come to the last slide, to run behind quality process and not to run behind metrics. Now, once a framework is developed, many of them try to achieve that metrics rather than institutionalizing the process. Now, I wish to tell to all of you in this forum, the best cartoon I ever cherish is Tom and Jerry. Now, in the chase between Tom and Jerry, it's always Jerry who walks with the cheese. Now, why? Because while Tom, throughout the cartoon, runs for the cheese, but Jerry runs for life. All of us in this academic and administrative process are all humans. Now, we all have a reason to live. Now, when we have a reason to live, we also have an efficiency to perform. Life is much bigger than what we can just count in numbers. So in this efficiency, we need to see how efficient we perform. So the cheese is towards for those who run for their life and a better performance in their life than for those who run for the cheese, because it's just going to be a short-term benefit for them and not a long-term improvement for them. Well, if you could just allow me, I will stop my slides here and I'm ready to interact if people are ready to shoot up their questions.
Thank you, ma'am. Now the session is open for discussion. People feel free to ask query to her, Dr. Priya Narayanan, madam. Kindly unmute your mic and post your query. Thank you.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, this is Roshan from Acharya Institute of Technology, Bangalore. Am I audible, ma'am?
Okay.
So, ma'am, only one question.
Yes, you are. You are.
What we find is we find a lot of documentation work, and it affects our day-to-day whatever activities we are following. So, how to think that, ma'am? How to resolve this issue? We feel like we are doing more of the documentation, following the task and all that. So, can you just elaborate on that, ma'am, a little bit?
Okay, Roshan, I just want to ask you, you seem to be a young person.
Yes,
Do
ma'am.
you do this, do you watch your calories?
கேக்குறாங்க மேம்
Do you watch your calories when you eat?
No, no, ma'am.
Roshan,
No, ma'am.
you don't watch your calories when you eat. Okay. Do you watch how many steps you walk a day? How much you
Uh,
burn your calories?
yes, the smartwatch and all that we'll use and we'll check it.
No, we will check it, Nahi Roshan. I'm asking you whether you check it.
Yes, ma'am. I check. I use the smartwatch and I check it.
Okay. So if you're regular at it, you will not be asking this question at all because maintaining this is not a burden, rather, it helps you. Documentation is not a burden, rather, documentation enables you to do the process. Okay. For those who are not used to that, it will be a burden because for those who are used to the, I will say not ancient though, but old school of thought, is that we always think a lecturer is only to lecture and not to do any other job apart from that. But the duty of the lecturer is also to do the documentation of how far, how better your students' performance is, how far, how better your performance is. All these things are essential. Okay, to some extent, yes, documentation is essential and it's the need of the hour for not only your performance but for the institution performance. But to some extent, when I have to say that when this documentation is asked again and again, like say you submit once a year that what all your publications are, where all you have gone training programs, where what all you have enhanced your skill, all that you submit once to the institution is fine. But every once, for NARF they ask you once, or for NAC they ask you once, for QF ranking again they ask you once, for annual report again they ask you once, then it is wrong. The wrong is on the part of how do you maintain these documents or where there is a document maintenance system or an MIS for an institute. But doing it once also, if you're feeling it too burdened, I think you should have strong shoulders and get to practice the same. Roshan, I hope I answered you.
Sorry to interrupt you, ma'am. One instruction I wanted to give to the delegates, madam. Kind attention to all the participants and delegates across the globe. As I said in the morning, for the post-lunch discussion, feedback is linked, is shared in the chat box. Request you to go through and complete the feedback. It will be encounter for your attendance at the time of certificate distribution. I request all the participants and delegates post-lunch discussion for feedback link is shared in the chat box. Kindly complete the same. Thank you, ma'am. Any other query to be discussed with her, please feel free to ask her.
Some of the people have written in the chat that the PPT was not visible. Was the PPT visible to all of you?
Ma'am, actually, she has not made a pin with your screen, ma'am. Later on, we have informed it has been sorted out, ma'am. No problem.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Any queries? Kindly unmute your mic and the same you can ask with her. If no more queries, we'll wind up the session with your permission. Anybody else wants to ask with her? Any clarification to be sorted out now? Okay, thank you, delegates, as well as dignitaries across the globe. This is the platform witnessed how transformation from good to superior and to great professor with a drastic growth. If a word enough to coin her discourse, I should extol with idol of knowledge. It's enough to embrace her. We highly adore your lecture on IEEE in Higher Education Institute. It paved a way for freshening up our mind with different approaches. Once again, with warm heart, I thank you once again, ma'am, for spending your valuable time with us. Thank you one and all. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.